Hi there. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Follow Your Passion podcast. I'm your host, Erwin Wils. I'm a mindset and business strategist and founder of Millionaire Life Strategy. In this podcast, I'm interviewing my clients and other entrepreneurs that are following their passion and make a good living out of it. When you want to know more about me or what I can do for you, check out my website, millionaireLifestrategy.com. But first, check out this episode of Follow Your Passion. Hi everybody, welcome to a new episode of Follow Your Passion. Let me introduce my guest of today. Her name is Jme Thomas. Jme is the founder of Motley Zoo Animal Rescue. And as the name implies, she and her team rescues dogs and cats and other pets to ensure animals wouldn't fall through the cracks, to provide someone to care for them when there's no one else. Started in 2009, Motley Zoo Animal Rescue has been that someone for over 3,800 animals, many of them needing extensive and expensive medical support. In 2014, Jme also started her Rockstar treatment services, consisting of dog daycare and training. Besides being grassroots, starting from nothing, Motley Zoo Animal Rescue is unlike any other rescue organization out there. They've been a leader in the industry simply because they did what they believed was right, even when it was never done before. Welcome, Jme.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So could you share the story how you decided to start Motley Zoo Animal Rescue?
Yes. So it started when I never had a dog growing up, and I got a dog as an adult right when I got married. And she was a little quirky and didn't really like other dogs, but she had come from a foster-based system. And so I said to this person who'd been watching her, I was like, you watch this dog for 6 weeks and then you just give her away? I could never do that. And I always laugh about that now. But so when I got her home, I saw she didn't really like other dogs. And she was actually downright like crazy with my mother-in-law's dog. And I looked at it like a puzzle, and I thought, I can fix this. I can help her be a real dog. And I got this email that said, these dogs will die if you don't help. And I took it very literally. And I said to my husband, can we please foster a dog? And he's like, are you crazy? Have you met our dog? And I was like, I think we can make it work. And he was like, you can't keep the dog. And I was like, I don't want to keep the dog. I just want to help our dog. And I want to save this dog's life. And he said, okay, well, we can try it once. So we tried it and it worked. And I cried like a baby when I gave the dog away. And after doing that a few times, our dog actually did learn how to play. She became more social. And we worked with a few groups over the years, but then we started to feel that there were some things that could be changed, some things that could be improved on to help both animals and the people who are helping these animals. And we met some people who also felt that way too. And so we decided that we would start our own organization, and where we could make the policies that we believed were the best for people and animals.
Nice. And how did you come up with the name Motley Zoo? Is there a special reason for it?
Yeah, it kind of has a bunch of meanings. But when I was working with those other organizations, somebody would ask me, well, if you had a rescue, what would you call it? And then the name Motley Zoo just kept coming to mind. Like, I always thought a motley crew is kind of a weird term, and it always kind of fascinated me. And then just putting zoo on the end of it, because it would be a bunch of different animals. But motley being, it's a colorful group of people from all different places and walks of life, ethnicities, backgrounds, rescuing a variety of animals of the same, variations. And of course, I love my rock and roll, and motley crew. So it really just kind of all worked. And when we were, voting on the name, of course, I hoped everyone would vote for that. But, other people came up with different names, and I came up with some other names. But thankfully, Motley Zoo won out. And that was the first really cool thing about establishing a unique identity and our branding and all that.
Nice. And as I understand it correctly, Motley Zoo Animal Rescue, it's not like a shelter for dogs or an asylum, but it's truly a foster program, right?
Yes. So we do have the facility where we do dog daycare and training, but when we leave at night, no one stays here. So all the animals that we take care of are living with people, living in their homes, like one of their own pets. So we can be infinitely as big as we need, or, we don't have to have too many fosters. So people can come and go as fosters or, take a break. So yeah, it's spreading out the work to individual volunteer families so that we never run out of space and the dogs don't and animals don't run out of time.
Nice. And do you also train the foster parents how to take care of a dog or a cat or whatever animal they're fostering?
Yes, we do have an orientation, which kind of helps people kind of get the idea of what fostering's like. It's not just playing with animals. There are responsibilities. You have to get them to vet appointments. You need to make them available when we have potential adopters ready. So sometimes that's bringing them to events or, just being available for an adoption meeting. So we have to kind of, find a meeting of the minds of what people want or expect, and then what we need for the animals. And then we do offer training classes for our dog families. And the cat team has four volunteers that work really hard to coordinate and take care of, the fosters and cats. So we do a lot of, I guess I call it hand holding, where we really, make sure that people know what they're doing and that the animal's doing well, and people report to us and send us pictures and stories. And so this communication continues to happen, even if we haven't seen the animal for weeks.
Nice. So would you say that Motley Zoo Animal Rescue it's not only about rescuing the animals, but it's also that you're building like a community of foster parents, volunteers, and everybody is delivering their added value and services to take care of the animals?
Yes, I feel like we're building a society that treats animals as sentient beings, that they are not property, they are family members. And through, by having these animals in people's homes and by teaching them, proper care and how to work with, behavior problems or things like that, we're building a more tolerant and compassionate animal community. And, getting more of the community involved, because we have that opportunity to kind of let people live their lives, but participate. It's not like you have to make a time once a week that you have to come. And, so fostering can be great because it really works with your schedule.
Nice. Yeah. And how big is the team right now? Because over 3,800 animals, that's a lot to.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to say because it kind of fluctuates. But for example, I was asked, how many animals did we have last year at this time and how many do we have now? And we have twice as many dogs and cats now as we did before. So I feel like we tend to hover around 150 or more fosters. But, wow. Some people adopt their animals and then maybe they don't foster again, but other people continue to foster. Sometimes people take a break. Sometimes they come back. Sometimes they get a new job and they can't do it again. So I feel like the influx is kind of this hovers around 150 to 200. And then we have equally that many animals, really.
Yeah, and just for the audience, that the difference between adopting and fostering is if a foster parents gets an animal, you stay. You still have the ownership as an organization, and when people decide to adopt the animal, they become the new owners of the animal. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. So the foster families are watching them temporarily. They are allowed to adopt their animals. So unless or until they decide to choose otherwise, it's temporary. And then once it's adopted, then yes, that family is committing to taking on the responsibilities of that animal, any continued ongoing vet costs and all that. But when the animals are in our care and foster care, we take care of everything.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how long would an animal be in this foster program?
So it does vary. Things like the season, the color of the animal, the breed, the size. It's very interesting how it can vary. But we usually say 4 to 6 weeks. because it takes us a couple weeks to get to know them. So we really don't want to take in an animal today and then adopt it tomorrow. We'd rather do a foster to adopt, get all their things together and make sure the animal's healthy and no surprises. So we do take our time initially. And then sometimes it's much longer. If an animal has a particular challenge, maybe a health condition, something like even temporary, we're trying to get them healthy from an upper respiratory infection or something like that, they could stay with us much longer. So I think the longest that we've had an animal is like 3 years. And that's a long time. Most fosters will not do it for 3 years. That's when the animals end up with one of the board members and we're prepared to, continue working with them. But they do have a home with us unless and until they find an adoptive home. So
nice.
Yeah, most animals find a home within a few months.
So would you say that the whole fostering program is focused on getting the animals ready for adoption and give them so like socializing them, if they have health issues to get them back on track again so that they are able to be adopted?
Yes, I kind of liken it to test driving the animal and performing some, tune-ups. So we get to kind of see what they're like in a household environment so that we can prepare an adopter and choose the right adopter for the animal. And then, yes, make sure everything's running well under the hood, that they're healthy, all that kind of stuff. So the foster family kind of is the get to know you and work out the kinks. And then the adoptive family has that much less effort to put in, and it's more likely that the animal can stay in their home and they won't run into the same challenges. Yeah. So fostering can be a little challenging because you do have to overcome some obstacles and understand that you are trying to correct anything that might make the animal unadoptable or less adoptable. So yeah, the whole goal is to make them the most adoptable they can be and to find the right family.
Yeah, and I know by experience that it's very it can be very complex to find the right parents for them, right? I know when we got our boys, and for the people that are watching the video, you can see the picture of my two boys in the background. We decided also to get a dog. And it was a dog that came from Romania, and I'm from the Netherlands. So and it was like a mix of the herder breed, right? A shepherd breed, and it was a lovely animal. It was a male, and we were all very fond of the dog. The only issue was that our boys were about, I think, were 4, 5, 6 years old, something like that. They were going to primary school, but the dog had this thing in its mind that it had to protect us, and it would attack strangers without any warning.
Oh no!
Yeah. So that was hard, We couldn't have friends playing at our home, or we had to put him in the bench, and he could just, out of nothing, who could attack somebody. So with tears in our eyes, we had to return him to the organization. And at that time, we decided to get a puppy. At least we know more about the background of the puppy. Sure. So I know by experience it can be very hard. There were actually the dog was stationed, so to speak, with a family that already had dogs. And then it was just it knew its place within the dogs, right? So it didn't have any. There were some alpha males, so he just behaved, and they never noticed that behavior against strangers.
Yeah. So sometimes dogs, either they can't live by themselves because they're so used to living with dogs, and they are a follower, not a leader. And we find that a lot. So if you look at some of our dogs that are up for adoption, it says, needs another dog in the home. And so you take them out of that environment and they really kind of just feel out of their element. So he thought he needed to be alpha, but he also wasn't confident and had no business being that that dog. And
Yeah.
so he was stressed out, and that's why that was happening. And, you know, being of a herding breed, that's, you know, they kind of do that. So there are a lot of things about that, maybe they could have tried him in a different home, or, you know, they could have exposed him to children. But yeah, if they didn't take him out in the world by himself, it can be hard to know. So we try to change their environment sometimes, especially if they're staying with us for a long time. We might move them to a new home to see if there's a change in their behavior, and if we need to do anything about it.
Exactly. And it shows how important it is, right? To do such things. So
Yep.
You mentioned that you have become a leader in the industry simply because you did things you believed were right, even when it was never done before. Could you give an example of something that you did that just felt was right, even though the other organizations never done it before?
Yes, I think not using guilt manipulation or that sadness, and instead trying to be a positive force, empowering people. And honestly, like the way we say, like, be a rock star for the animals. Everyone wants to be cool. Like, you know, whether you're 15 or 50 or whatever, people want to feel cool. They want to feel like they're doing something important. And doing the rock and roll theme really has appealed to so many different people. So, you know, a lot of rescue can be older women, but our audience is everybody because it includes everybody. We somehow can include everybody by making them feel important, making them feel like they can make a difference instead of making them feel hopeless or overwhelmed. And a lot of times I think organizations tend to, you know, kind of play on people's guilt, and they're like, oh, this animal's dying, it's so sad. And like, yeah, that is true. And we have those cases sometimes, and sometimes we have to talk about a case like that. But rather we focus on engaging people and trying to show them what they can do, not just speak at them. So just kind of our approach and that whole theme, people were like, what is this group doing? Like, they're young, crazy. They don't know what they're doing. They're like, they thought we were going to crash and burn. And, you know, it turned out like that's what people wanted. And of all the things that we've done, even starting the dog daycare and training center, no one had ever thought of that before. And even now, when I talk to people across the country in different organizations, they're like, you do what? Like, that's such a good idea. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't seem that original to me, but it was. So we're just not afraid to try things. And actually, I think the best example of this is how we take the animals to meet musicians and celebrities when they come to town. So we had a group of animals, a group of kittens, and we named them after mine and my husband's favorite band called Rancid. It's a punk band. And I had a dream that I brought the kittens to the backstage, and I asked the band if they would take pictures with the kittens and help them find homes. And they were like, this is so great, so cool. And when I woke up, I was laughing, and I was telling my husband, and I'm like, it was so fun. And, you know, they were so nice. And then I just stopped laughing, and I was like, I'm going to do that. And he's like, what? And he's like, you're going to take kittens to a concert. And I was like, yes, I'm going to go to the back door. I'm going to bring the kittens, and it's going to go just like my dream. And that's exactly what happened. I just went there, and they thought it was great. They took pictures. I spent like 45 minutes with them, which is like an eternity in rockstar time.
Yeah.
And they invited us on the guest list. And, you know, I just wasn't afraid to go for that weird thing. And people really hadn't done that before. And so then my husband's like, well, Snoop Dogg is coming and Slayer, and let's see what you can do with that. And I was like, okay, I'm up for the challenge. And so we just did that. We just kept going to these shows, bringing animals and being like, hey, do you want to meet these adoptable animals and help them find homes? And now it's a thing that a lot of organizations do, but no one had really done it until we tried it. And, you know, a lot of people wouldn't have had the courage to do that, or, you know, I don't know, it just would have been a silly idea. But I'm one of those people that's like, sure, I'll just try it. I'm not afraid of failing or looking stupid or anything like that. Like, you never know. So
Yeah. Well, it's, I think it's also, if you look at what one of the biggest fears of people is speaking in public, right? And I think that has a lot to do with the mindset, because people are afraid what people think of them, right?
Right. Yeah.
If they're on stage, what will people think of me? How will I do the things I'm supposed to do, right? And that's when they become nervous. But as a public speaker, you should always remember it's not about you, right? It's about the service you deliver, the value you add to the audience. So it's all about them. And that's exactly the mindset I hear you're sharing with me and with the audience as well, that it's not about you, right? You're not going to this punk band because you want to feel important. You just want those kittens to be adopted. And anything that helps, that's a benefit. That's a plus, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I'm not afraid to pursue that for those animals. Like,
exactly.
So, yeah.
And that's beautiful. It's not about you. It's not about meeting those famous people. It's about getting those animals adopted, give them a family. And that's why you do it. And that's probably also why it works, because the celebrities will see it's not about you. You don't want to have a picture with the celebrities. You want pictures of the celebrities with the animals.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess a lot of them never had that before, and it's for them, it doesn't cost them anything, just a few minutes of their lives, and they can actually make an impact with it. So it's a win-win situation for everybody.
Yeah. And they, a lot of times if they do have pets, many don't, but if they do, they really miss their pets. And so this is like, we're doing them a service of bringing them this comfort and this joy when they're stressed out. And I mean, you can see that sometimes they come off the road and they're in a terrible mood. They see puppies and kittens and their face lights up, and these big burly men, and they're like, oh, look at the little kitty.
Yeah.
I mean, we see a side of these people that no one sees, because we have this thing that just makes them happy. And so yeah, we're doing them a service, and then they are making an impact every time they share that on their, whatever social or whatever, it really makes a difference. And even if people can't adopt that kitten because they live in Europe, we tell them, go find an animal at your shelter, go foster an animal near you. Like, you can still help, even if it's not this animal.
Yeah. So did you also, did your business change, or did the pandemic, the lockdown had a big impact on your organization?
It did, especially because before the pandemic, daycare was a big revenue stream for us. So people going to work and school, they bring their dogs here, we watch them for the day, they pick them up on their way home. When everybody stayed home from work, nobody needed babysitting anymore. I mean, dog daycare is so much more than babysitting. It is socialization for your dog. It's like school and work for your dog. It's a benefit. They're learning something when they go there, but that's not how a lot of people see it. And so all of a sudden, this thing that was helping us raise so much money and helping pay our wages and pay our overhead, all of a sudden we had nothing. And there were so few animals coming, and some people were just bringing them because they felt bad that they didn't want us to go under or whatever. And people were very absorbed in their worlds. They were not donating. If they were, it was humanitarian things, like they were trying to, unite people, but animals were not very much on the radar, unless it came to getting a new dog. And now people were home and they were like, now I have time to do this. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean they invested that time in training those dogs or socializing them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we were like, what could we do that makes a difference? And what we saw was the people that were applying to come to daycare were actually all these new puppies that people had gotten. And we were like, these dogs need training. They can't even do daycare yet because they can't behave properly. They need to learn how to behave as a dog. And we were like, let's start a training program. So we started, offering these services where, we work with your dog for over an hour, and they get managed play groups where we're trying to really teach them how to play well. and focus on them in a small group rather than, a room full of 15 dogs or something. So changing to the training made a big difference. We started getting more business, whereas other daycares were still not succeeding. Meanwhile, we're adopting out animals like crazy, and we actually didn't have enough dogs for people, if you can believe that. I never thought that would be a thing. I used to say, don't worry, there'll never be a shortage of homeless animals in need. Well, I had to eat my words during COVID because we couldn't get enough animals. Now, unfortunately, kind of the situation has swung back, and now a lot of people are giving up their animals, which has been very difficult. But yeah, we had to pivot, and we know how to just adapt and try things and, come up with a new program and new policies and new strategy. On a dime, we just adapt, and everyone's ready for that. That's our culture. Our culture is we can be better tomorrow than we were today. And so, it's not just sit back and like, well, if it's not fixed, or not broken, don't fix it. No, we're always trying to improve. And so that makes us really agile and ready to keep up with the current demand or whatever. Nice. Help keep us afloat. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's also shows your entrepreneurial mindset that a lot of, I remember when the lockdown just started, there were a lot of, I would almost say so-called entrepreneurs that were didn't get any business, and they were just hoping that the old times would return again. While the other ones, they just accepted the situation as is and started thinking creatively how they could pivot the business, to make another income or find other ways to survive and succeed. And that's actually what you did as well. You didn't wait and cried and did nothing, right? You just thought, how can we make this still work? What is the current situation? What do we notice, and how can we use it in our advantage? That at least we can still deliver the service we owe to the dogs and the other animals, of course.
Yeah, it's I'm so business minded, but I also have that compassion and patience, and that you need to run a charity too. It's not just money, because we will never put $1 before a dog. So it's never just about the profit. It's about making the balance work. And if we're losing sight of our mission somehow in an effort to earn money, then we're doing it wrong. So we're constantly checking what we're doing and how we're balancing it, and making sure that the animals always come first and everything else is to benefit them and not at, the cost of caring for them or dealing with the people that we work with. So
nice. And those are some great values as well. And I can believe that they're not only your values, but everybody working within the Motley Zoo Animal Rescue is aligned with those values. And that's why it's a success.
Yes, we have created a culture. I'm humbled often by the people that I work with and that are helping, make this mission possible, because they, exceed expectations. They don't just do the bare minimum. And we just had this, teamwork too. And everyone's in it for the benefit of all. No one's in it for themselves. And if they are, they don't last very long around here, because it's very obvious, they don't fit in. Yeah. So the people that last are the people who are super committed to the animals, and they're super committed to the organization because they feel empowered, they feel they're making an impact, and they have friends and they love what they're doing. So the culture, I've been told that the culture is exceptional. And I really appreciate that, because we, of course, strive to be that way. So
nice. So I can imagine that the majority of the animals that you rescue are dogs and cats. Are there any exotic pets that you have rescued as well?
Yes. So one time we helped a cow, and we had a baby pig once, and that was crazy. That was like having a real human baby. I mean, it was so much work. Yeah. And we never had to adopt out an animal that we were worried someone might want to eat it. And so that was kind of scary. And we found out, unfortunately, pig people aren't very friendly. So they thought we didn't know what we were doing and they didn't want us to have the pig. I don't know, but we did a great job. And the family still tells us about the pig. And we've had reptiles, birds, ferrets, guinea pigs, bunnies. But yeah, dogs and cats are by far the most. In my personal time, because we don't have a license to do wildlife, I work with squirrels with a different organization, a wildlife organization, but that's my personal, thing. I would like to be able to work with wildlife at some point. And my partner Patty in the organization, she really wants to rescue wolves and wolf dogs. And so perhaps someday that will be something that we do too. But it's kind of like things just happen as they need to. And, we don't jump ahead and try and take on something that we don't think we can really manage. And if there's a better organization that's more skilled or has, better resources for it, then we, by all means, will refer them to the experts in that department. So, we don't rescue horses right now because we don't have anywhere to put them. And, we don't have a horse expert. So, but there is a horse rescue here. And so we are like, great, go talk to these people. They're total experts and they'll put you in, send you in the right direction. So,
perfect.
Yeah.
So knowing your expertise is also very important to maintain the success you're currently having. Yeah. Yes.
And not to be overly excited or enamored, by the idea of having an animal. Like there's a huge responsibility and, we're not going to fail. So sure, it was a risk in some way to take the pig, but you got to start somewhere. And, we were very cautious about what we did. We were very cautious about who we placed the pig with. And, she's still doing great. So,
nice.
You have to learn somewhere, but you also have to be smart about it and not take on more than you can chew.
Yeah, definitely. So do you still have a dog in your private life?
Yes. I actually have 3 dogs and 2 cats. So my house is usually pretty full. Yeah. At one point I had 5 dogs and 2 cats. But 2 of my little dogs have passed away. And so I have a very old Chihuahua. He's 15.
Oh, wow.
And he's still doing really great. I don't know. He doesn't look 15 at all. And then during the pandemic, we fostered 2 puppies, a small one and a big one. And we normally didn't foster big dogs, but I fell in love with this foster dog and we ended up adopting them. So within a few weeks, we adopted 2 dogs at the same time. But the smaller one acts much like a puppy. But the bigger one, he's always acted like he's like 10 years old. So he's just super chill, even as a puppy. But yeah, that's my speed. My speed is chill, like a lot of energy. It's hard when I have a foster dog that doesn't kind of fit my vibe at home.
Nice.
And yeah, so puppies are usually not for me because they are so much work and they're too much for me.
Yeah.
But everybody else wants to foster puppies, so I'm fine. I'll take the old grumpy biting dog and I'll work with them.
Perfect. So. And how does your spouse feel about the Motley Zoo Animal Rescue?
Yes,
because
so
it was a bit reluctant when you wanted to foster your first dog.
Well, but, yes, because he just worried we'd end up collecting animals, and I had to promise that I would not keep that dog, and I had to keep that promise. And I kept that in my mind. I'm just watching this dog, kind of like pet sitting until someone comes along. And so it wasn't my dog. It was someone else's dog. And I just didn't know who it was or when they would come. And that was important. That was part of it, was, committing to giving the animal up. And, but my husband actually grew up with dogs. And so he knew a lot more about dogs than I did. And the second dog we fostered, like, it worked out the first time. So he said we could do it again. And actually he was surprised because he's like, how did you make them get along? And I was like, I don't know. I just tried to think like a dog. And, it turns out I can think like a dog. And the second dog, though, that we fostered was very challenging. And I was ready to call it. And I was like, I can't do this. This dog scares me. I don't know how to deal with it. And he's like, well, if we quit, that dog is going to die. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm at my limit. This is beyond my capacity. And he's like, well, I'll kind of take the lead here. And so, he took kind of over to taking care of her, and we got a trainer. I started to understand what her issues were. And once I understood that, and finally we found her a good home, I was like, well, I can do anything now. So I just felt like, it was a big hurdle and some people would have stopped, but for me, it only made me more determined. And from there, it was just foster and foster and foster. And sometimes we need a break, and sometimes we'll take a break, and we still go on vacations and we still do things. But, my husband loves animals just as much. And that's really important, because rescue can actually cause a lot of divorces. If you have a spouse that doesn't care as much about the animals, or doesn't understand why you care so much about the animals, it can cause divorce. And we did not do this before we got married. So I'm very lucky that he is just as passionate. It's just not his full-time thing like it is mine. So it's his hobby, his spare time, and it's my full-time thing. But he, he's very committed, and he will always help out.
Nice. And it's great to have a supporting spouse indeed, and I think it's not only with what you're doing, but I guess it's also for many other businesses as well. If you don't get the support from your spouse, it's so much harder to become a success and to persevere, when things get rough, so to speak. So yeah, I think we're all blessed that we have a supporting spouse indeed. So
yeah, I talk to people that they can't even talk to their spouse about what happened that day or what was bothering them, or some situation, whereas I can go home and I can just tell my husband everything, and we can sometimes cry about it, sometimes laugh about it, and but I know he understands and he cares how I feel. Yeah. I would be so lost if I couldn't share that with somebody. So yeah, it is so important.
Yeah, perfect. I'm having a great time, Jme. I'm afraid we could talk for hours on this subject.
I think so too.
Yeah. If there's any tip or little piece of wisdom you could share with the audience, what would it be?
Well, I think, you should follow your passions. You should, if something really speaks to you, pursue it. But don't forget that there are practical things too. You have to, if you want to start something, you need a business plan. You need to be smart about your money. You need to plan. You need to do things. So, even though this is a charity and it's very much an emotional thing, you still have to see it as a business, and you still have to make a bottom line. And so, I think remembering to keep a balance between your emotions and practicality, and your emotions and logic, and your emotions and funding. It's very hard to do. And especially when you're dealing with, these pathetic little animals that are sick and they're dying. It can be hard to do, but I say go for it, because I've pursued, if I wanted to do something, I've done it. And it's made me really happy, but it's also been a challenge. If you take the road that no one does, like, you're going to be fighting and beating back the bushes the whole way there. And, my husband's always like, you picked the tough road. and I did, but that challenge, that personal challenge and overcoming those things is what is so rewarding. And makes me feel like my life matters. I know that I matter. Maybe people won't remember me when I die, and I don't really care, but I'll know that I made a difference. And I think that's what people lack so often. They never find anything that speaks to them, that makes them feel useful and important to others.
Nice. Great advice indeed, Jme. So if people want to know more about you or get in touch with you, or maybe even thinking about adopting or fostering an animal, how can you do that? Where can they find you?
So our website is motleyzoo.org. And so that's MOTLEY zoo.org. And there's a lot of information there, not only about our organization in particular, but about the difference between a foster-based rescue in a shelter. So if you're looking to adopt, how they can serve you differently and how they serve the animals differently, what to expect when you're fostering, how the process may work. There's a lot of information. And then we have a blog that, tackles some of the tips and tricks and things that I've learned along the way. And kind of putting to rest a lot of myths and, ideas that people think are true. And I'm like, nope. So trying to help educate people a little bit about the realities of adopting and fostering and what it's like from our perspective too, not just people who want pets.
Nice. Jme, I want to thank you for this very open and informal interview. Actually, it wasn't really an interview. It was more like having a great conversation with a friend that it feels like I've known for years. So thank you for the great conversation. Let's stay in touch. And thanks again for doing a great job out there.
Thank you. I so appreciate your podcast, and I think it's really great. And I know it inspires a lot of people. So I'm happy to be a part of it. Thanks for inviting me.
I hope you liked this episode. Make sure to check out the other episodes, because each one is filled with interesting and inspiring stories and energy. Are you following your passion as well and make a good living out of it? Contact me and you could be my next guest. Would you like to follow your passion but are not there yet? Check out my website millionaireLifeStrategy.com and book an appointment to discover what I could do for you. Don't forget to share the podcast with your friends so that they get inspired as well.